Pues hola y bienvenidos a una nueva entrevista para códigooculto.com y el canal de YouTube a Enigma. Ahora estamos con el señor Roberto Pinotti. Thank you so much for being with us, sir.
Thank you to you.
So I'm going to make a brief introduction for the audience in case somebody doesn't know you yet. So he has studied sociology. He's member of NICAP, MAFN and CUFOS, founder of the Centro Ufologico Nazionale in Italy, editor of UFO magazine, president of hacer, and author and lecturer. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you, sir. So, first question, which is the obligated one this year. What's your take on the famous UAP report?
What's mine?
Your take, your opinion.
My opinion. But of course, UFOs exist, and exactly like the Pentagon admitted recently, they are objects. That means that they are not only real from the physical point of view, that they have also an intelligent control, that they are they have an advanced technology moving them, and that we don't know where they come from, and that's enough after all. My personal opinion is that they came from outside the Earth, of course, and probably also not only from they are extraterrestrials, not only from the normal physical point of view, but maybe also from a dimensional point of view, in the sense that today our physics, our science is going to admit that the universe should be called a multiverse in this sense. But after all, this doesn't change the problem. They are outside from here.
All right. And why do you think organizations like the Pentagon, for example, are starting to talk about the UAP phenomenon?
I think simply because after 70 years of lies, it's more and more difficult to deny. Simply for this. The public opinion developed a positive approach which cannot be denied.
I see. And since we're seeing this change on governmental organizations, do you think we are going to see a disclosure soon?
I don't think that we will have a disclosure soon, but we absolutely have to go on in order to obtain this disclosure as soon as possible. And this means that we will have to fight a lot in different environments. In fact, the target of hacer is to try to bring this subject in front of authorities, because authorities may deny everything, but in the long run it will be more and more impossible to deny.
And since you have this background in sociology, what do you think would happen if the disclosure was going to be made today, for example?
Well, today is another thing. Yesterday, probably, we would have experienced a sort of collapse of our civilization, because people was quite unprepared to such a disclosure, to such a revelation. Today is a little different, because if we consider also the polls, well, up to 30 years ago, for instance, only about the 25-30% of people was open to this perspective. Today, everything is completely changed, and only a minority of maybe the 20% of people is not available to accept this. And so, even because of the media, the young people changed the general opinion, and so the people is open at the idea that we are not alone in the universe, and that there could be someone else. Our problem, I think, is to let people understand that probably the pilots of UFOs are no more dangerous than the people who is governing us presently, simply because if they would have invaded or conquered or destroyed us, they surely would have done this before. And since they did not do this, I think that simply they are monitoring the situation on Earth. And after all, there is another consideration to do. Normally, a contact is an exchange of things between the two. And the problem is, what have we to give the aliens? People who may have thousands or even millions of years of civilizations before us. In this way, you understand, you could compare what, for instance, the Indios of Brazil may have to give to an American citizen or a Russian citizen or a European citizen. Very few. From a human point of view, it's different, of course. But from a practical point of view, there is no real interest. So I think that it may be considered normal that they do not disturb us more than that. They don't need, in fact, to have an open contact with us, after all. They don't need. We may need, but they don't need. We may need because they could perhaps give us interesting discoveries, interesting elements we don't have achieved. But after all, they could say also, but it's not the case to contact them openly. After all, this could create a big problem to them, and probably they could not be interested in having problems.
Okay, so regarding this thing, like we are not able to give them anything of their interest, perhaps that could bring us to the abductions subject, which is my next question. Because as far as I know, in your opinion, not all reported abduction cases would be true. So the question would be, which part of them or which percentage would be the real ones?
So we cannot deny that exactly like the contactee phenomenon exists, also the abduction exists. Frankly, we have to say that the abduction phenomenon is extremely limited. It is not so extended like it seems. So what I think is that probably we have to do not only with a single civilization up there, but with different visitors. If it is so, their common behavior could be not to be involved more than that. Okay, but while some of them, for instance, could be interested in suggesting certain things to us, also if general people may not know this, others may be interested in other subjects, like, for instance, the study of life on Earth, vegetables, animals, man, and also man may be studied. So why not? In fact, the abduction phenomenon has to do with people from out of here, of course, who seems to study the human being and also from the genetic point of view. And this may be, after all, normal, if you may consider this from a mere scientific point of view. The problem is this behavior against our interests? I don't know. In this moment, we don't see practical results of this. Nobody could exclude that this may happen, but if it is so, it's a sort of hidden thing, of course. Besides, you know that there are, how could we call them, legends, rumors, about the fact that, for instance, the American government is already in touch with the alien nations. The first story about this was expressed in a book by Jimmy Guillet in France, and the title of this book was Blackout sur les soucoupes volantes. Guillet was the first to say that President Eisenhower had met a group of aliens in the Muroc airfield, now it is called the Edwards Air Force Base in California. The result was that for the first time the Americans were certain that someone else was up there and they had to face someone else. The result was negative because the people was not informed, of course. Eisenhower said, okay, we can tell the people. And frankly, I could also say that probably he was right, because the public opinion was quite unprepared. It would have been a chaotic situation if by chance from one day to the other, okay, the aliens exist and
they are here.
Yeah, no, but not only, consider that there is another problem. This revelation would completely overthrow the role of man. Man will be no longer the center of nature and the creation, will be only a part of the creation. And everything which was centered on man in creation is completely overthrown. So this is a big change, you understand. In any case, there is a second story about this. The detail was that the guys from up there, Eisenhower could have met in that meeting, could have suggested them, in order to be supported by them, to avoid any possible link with nuclear weapons, because of the peril to transform Earth in a sort of atomic Armageddon. Of course, the American generals say, no, we can't eliminate atomic weapons. Yeah. So there was no treaty, because the aliens and the Americans, and simply they said, okay, keep silent, bye-bye. But there is another story.
Okay.
The other story was that in 1955 there would have been another encounter, and not with the same guys, but with another alien nation. And this other alien nation would have been sufficiently clever to give just some little things to the Americans, asking them to open their skies, not to be object of negative attacks from American planes. You remember that in the beginning the order was shoot them down. Yeah. Later the order was intercept, not shoot. And in 1955 in the Oloman Air Base, this second meeting would have taken place with this result. Today, nobody knows this. I am surprised that nobody understood this. If this story is true, this story has to do what was on the internet is called the Grida Treaty. Is GRIDA, E-A-D-A, treaty. What does grida mean? Nobody knows. Someone said, oh, it's a place. Someone says, it has to do with Grenada. No, Grenada is in 1977, has nothing to do with this. Grida is another thing, it's an acronym. Mm-hmm. It stands for GRAE, Alien Defense Agreement. No, this is the acronym, in other words. And if the things occurred in this way, the Americans would have linked themselves to Greys. And the Greys are the guys who abduct people to study humans. And if it is so, the American government is aware of this and they don't care. Don't forget that recently, in 2020, Professor Haim Eshed from Israel declared openly, and his curriculum is such that we can't doubt about him. He simply said that the American government has an agreement with aliens. I don't know how to interpret this position, but it's exactly what he said.
So those aliens plus our governments, they both wouldn't be so not well-intentioned.
They could be. Probably they are not interested to conquer us or to damage us, no. But the problem is this investigation they are doing towards us useful to us? I don't know.
I see. So last question, really quickly.
Yeah.
Because this would all link to the subject of religion. I mean, the way it would impact human societies if we knew right now. So you've got a book called UFO e Vaticano,
See?
which links the phenomenon with the Vatican. And so I would like to ask, what is the role of the Vatican in all this? And what do they know? Sorry.
The Vatican surely is quite aware that extraterrestrials exist. And they openly declare this because in 1952, Father Francis Connell, a Jesuit, said in the United States after the 1952 wave in the United States that as far as the Catholic Church was concerned, the American Catholics may be sure that the idea that we may be visited by extraterrestrials was not against our concepts of faith. This is 1952. In the 60s, we had a series of important theological articles published by Father Domenico Grasso, a Jesuit, on the official magazine of the Jesuits in Rome, La Civiltà Cattolica, in a positive way. Then we have Father Balducci, Monsignor Balducci, who was a very close friend of Pope John Paul II, don't forget it, and was also a personal friend of mine. He died, now he's dead, but he simply declared and went to congresses to say this, that UFOs are extraterrestrial spaceships and that we are visited by extraterrestrials. And then Specula Vaticana, the official astronomical observatory of the Vatican, who is headed today by people who does not work in the Vatican but in the United States, in Mount Graham, with American astronomers. Well, Father Funes, when he was nominated the chief of Specula Vaticana, said it's impossible that today we won't meet extraterrestrial advanced beings. When this will happen, we have to consider these guys our brothers from the cosmos. And then we have our present Pope, Pope Francis, who in public audience said, okay, the church has to handle with everything. If by chance, for instance, tomorrow, a delegation of Martians came to us, and the journalist said, well, what's he saying? And he smiled and said, Martians, the guys, the children says they have antennas and so on. that guys came to us and said, we want to be baptized. What will the church do? In other words, he already tried to prepare the people Don't forget that the new director of Specola Vaticana, Father Guy Consolmagno, 6 months later wrote a book, Will You Baptize an Extraterrestrial? And there is a theologian, a German Catholic theologian, Father Armin Kreiner, no, Father, he's not religious, Armin Kreiner, who wrote a very interesting book, edited in the Vatican, Jesus, UFOs and Aliens. So, in other words, the church is much more open than science, and probably is trying to prepare the
So they are doing the work already.
Exactly,
basically.
exactly.
Thank you so
Nothing.
much for your time, sir,
Thank you so
and
much.
for your answers.